Dystopian novels help us see tragic futures in our turbulent present and remind us of our worst impulses. A great dystopian fictional work warns us about the horrible trajectory our society is going down unless we stop. Most of all, dystopia is a commentary on the present, but also the history before it. Although dystopian fiction is grouped with speculative fiction, it can feel all too real for the reader. That's why the genre urges us to change our reality, mindset, or behaviour, or at the very least, reflect on it. As part of speculative fiction, dystopia conveys what realistic fiction can't. Science fiction and fantasy are accused of distorting reality, but in the case of dystopia, the current status quo is what fuels the hellish world we read about. However, dystopian fiction can have such a profound impact on our politics that it changes our environment. We all know the phrase, "that's Orwellian," or comparing conservatives to Gilead from the Handmaid's Tale, and honestly, these analogies can sound pretty hysterical at times. In this video, I will explain how hysteria and crass political analogies ruin great works of dystopian fiction. Although this video does not have massive spoilers, I will focus on 4 novels in particular: 1984 by George Orwell, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa, and Submission by Michelle Houellebecq. All 4 of these books are well worth reading, and were chosen because of their different takes on dystopia, as well as relevancy in the cultural and political sphere. I'm Madeleine Rose-Jones, and I explore literature, history, and culture. Subscribe for weekly videos helping you understand the world through fiction. Before I delve into the problems caused by hysterical comparisons, I'd like to make something clear. It's okay to compare any situation to a work of fiction. After all, we can't pretend society is some utopia where there are no problems. There are situations in the world so extreme that comparisons with dystopian fiction is kind of warranted. Also, we should appreciate literature's ability to convey themes and ideas throughout time. Literature, including dystopian fiction, is well equipped at exploring universalisms. Personally, I love how anyone can express themselves through fiction, regardless of who they are or what genre the novel is in. I am making the point that we should avoid hysteria specifically and restrain ourselves from shallow literary comparisons. It is entirely possible to compare 1984 or The Handmaid's Tale to the present day without hysteria, and I hope to encourage a thoughtful and more diligent approach to reality and fiction. It doesn't hurt to highlight the problems in rash comparisons between dystopia and our reality. Some of them include hysteria and straw manning. A great and obvious example is The Handmaid's Tale. During Donald Trump's time as president, many who opposed him were quick to compare his administration to Gilead, the tyrannical society from Atwood's novel. The author herself did this too. Images of women wearing handmaids' outfits were featured at women's marches in America. Coupled with the recently launched television adaptation on Hulu, a liberal journalist couldn't talk about The Handmaid's Tale without talking about the Republican Party. Such comparisons between Donald Trump and Gilead were always far-fetched and frankly ridiculous. I enjoy an article from Quillette which compares Gilead to Islamic theocracies such as Iran. That's a country where women are treated like birthing cattle, not multi-dimensional human beings with agency. I've linked the article below. From what I've heard, Atwood herself is not a fan of such comparisons, preferring to focus Gilead on right-wing politicians, like the ones we see in America. As much as I disagree, which I do, She's entitled to her own worldview. But I'll point this out. The hysterical imagery of The Handmaid's Tale did not help any feminist or left-leaning causes. It is far too easy to point out that no, Trump is not like the commander from The Handmaid's Tale. Those who do not think Trump is an invention of Gilead can point out his policies and articulate the lack of compelling evidence. But that's not the only reason why hysterical comparisons between The Handmaid's Tale and the present suck. Simply put, they have no factual backing. It's okay to compare fictional works to the present. I do it all the time. But if you want to convince others of your comparison, you need statistics, data, real examples to draw on. I myself try to keep this in mind. It's no secret, I'm not a fan of cancel culture or the aggressive tactics used by progressives. I can easily call them Orwellian, which I do. But I know it's not enough, and I understand my comparison is unconvincing unless I use factual evidence to complement the fictional example. The statement, controlling language is Orwellian, has gravitas. It's not solely due to George Orwell himself, but due to historical examples I can mention where controlling language has backfired horrendously, such as the Salem witch trials or the Chinese Cultural Revolution. If you must make the claim The Handmaid's Tale is alike to the Republican Party, you have to make the connection. Without it, your argument appears lazy. This is made quite clear when one actually reads The Handmaid's Tale. Sure, Margaret Atwood is not afraid of political commentary or injecting insight into contemporary culture. But where the book falls short is in its formula and world building. I reread The Handmaid's Tale last week, and the ending kind of bothered me. Without spoiling it, it felt cheap, convenient, and a rehash of Brave New World and 1984's ending. Margaret Atwood is clearly a strong writer, and she has vast ambitions, but she doesn't quite pull it off. Gilead has some striking imagery and symbolism, but she doesn't quite make the connection between the present and our imagined future enough. There are strong points in The Handmaid's Tale. I don't think it's a bad book or anything. The unnamed protagonist is fascinating and has plenty of depth. Atwood's description of things, events, people is quite remarkable. This is what frustrates me about The Handmaid's Tale. Atwood is so close to brilliance, but never reaches it. Atwood is certainly entitled to her own politics, but the constant comparisons between Republicans and Gilead tarnished her novel. She turned The Handmaid's Tale into a strawman argument and a piece of fear-mongering propaganda. The end result is political theatre and complex ideas simplified into buzz terms. We should also remember the multiple ways one can interpret fiction. I've noticed a trend of people, almost always online, claiming that no one understands George Orwell or 1984, and only they have the correct understanding. This is false. The beauty of fiction is that multiple interpretations people can have. So, if you want to compare the status quo to 1984 or The Handmaid's Tale, well, go for it. I'm not going to tell you that you don't actually understand the novel. Try to avoid hyperbole and use reason. It's far more convincing that way. Another problem with constant political comparisons is how it twists the novel into a message. You can write a rich dystopian novel, but have it labelled liberal or conservative. This happens to every controversial dystopian novel. Critics extract a few moments out of the novel and try to turn it into a political thesis. A great example of this is Submission by Michelle Houellebecq. For those unfamiliar with the novel, Submission is about a middle-aged professor during the 2022 French elections between Marine Le Pen and the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. The novel deals with nihilism in modern France and the detachment individuals have towards each other. But you wouldn't know that if you read the controversy over the novel. Journalists screeching non-stop about ethnic replacement theories and accusing Houellebecq of foul motives has obstructed what the novel is actually about. Submission is a brilliant novel, a dark survey into the human mind, an exercise in sex, nihilism, and dread. To reduce it down to supposedly far-right propaganda is absolutely vulgar. Books have far more to say than easy political slogans, and someone who has read The Handmaid's Tale ought to know that. Margaret Atwood's commentary on relationships and womanhood is far more dynamic and interesting than any political point she makes. I feel the same way about Michel Houellebecq's Submission, although I'd argue his novel is far superior to Atwood's. And I think that's because he never twists his novel into something it's not. I loathe how dystopian literature has turned into a political feud. Many critics and readers approach dystopian novels as political activists first and human beings second. All that matters is validating their ideology. While writing the script for this video, I was tempted to make it clear how unrealistic The Handmaid's Tale is and how the book is a failed experiment in speculative fiction. I would expand on my point about how Gilead is really Islamic and nothing like modern America. But I couldn't, even if I have sympathy towards those positions. Why? Because at the end of the day, that's not really the problem. Dumbing down literature is. Books, especially novels, are portals into the soul of humanity, and to see great, complex literary works torn apart is heartbreaking. It also puts current writers of dystopia at a disadvantage. It seems novels must meet some political criteria for it to be worthy of respect. There's no regard for characterization, setting, or storytelling, the actual factors deciding a story's quality. I'm not satisfied with claiming you can never compare fiction to the present. I believe there is a way forward, a stronger way to compare fact and fiction that isn't hysterical or ridiculous. I will suggest 3 checkpoints if a comparison is worth your time. 1. Is it backed up with statistics, historical reasoning, examples, or any form of data? It's all too easy to draw comparisons between the present and the fictional. However, a good, solid comparison will always demonstrate a superior understanding of the present. I don't think fiction makes you dumb or are less engaged with the world. Actually, I think the opposite. But I can see why people get that impression when they are bombarded with the Handmaid's Tale imagery. My second suggestion is simple. Drop the hysteria. It's vital you focus on the novel's strengths and consider the relevance of your political point. I'm reminded of my copy of The Memory Police, which was originally written in 1994 in Japanese. It was only translated recently, and there are many blurbs from The Guardian and The New York Times on my edition, eager to compare the dystopia depicted to the present. But these journalists never tell us why, nor give us any reason why we should pay more attention to the supposed present crisis. These outlets come across as hysterical, ideologically driven, and not very sharp. It's pure emotional reasoning. That makes some sense. After all, novels are emotional affairs. But if you are commenting on current political affairs, you won't convince anyone with soul hysterics. I understand why the publisher chose these evocative blurbs. After all, they must sell books. But they are doing a disservice to The Memory Police, which is a fantastic novel written in such a unique and somber way. Pardon the pun, but The Memory Police is a memorable book, and I highly recommend it. It's incredibly frustrating to see such a terrific novel from the 1990s simplified into a modern-day American political slogan. And finally, you must consider whether the analogy is even warranted. With Trump, there were so many dystopian references in the media. It clouded actual judgment of his administration and turned him into a boogeyman as opposed to an actual human being. As members of this civilization, we are not caricatures or cartoon personalities. Treating your opponents like that, especially in politics, will backfire and suggest to others that you interpret the world like a little child. Therefore, hysterical behaviour harms good dystopia. If you'd like to see more content, I have a blog called Snowy Fictions, which is stacked with articles all about literature, history and culture. You can find me on many social media platforms and even join my mailing lists. All are linked below.